This video is for the lesson 2.2 homework. We are doing domain and range of linear functions today. So now we're actually writing the domain and range of a function, okay? So it says, what is the name of a function whose values are continuous or unbroken over the specified domain? That is a continuous function. So that's like a graph. A graph is a continuous function. So a line on a graph like this is continuous. What's the name of a function whose values are distinct and separate and not connected? That's a discrete function. So that's like a mapping. So this one, every value is going to get hit in between those points on that line. But on a mapping, these are the only x's we have. These are the only y's we have. And so that's discrete. All right, so first thing we're going to do is we're going to write the domain and range from a linear graph. So domain is x, range is y. This is the x-axis, this is the y-axis. Remember, open circle is greater than or less than, and we use parentheses. Closed circle is greater than or equal to, less than or equal to, and we use brackets. So verbal description, I'm not ever going to make you write a verbal description. So this whole row, scratch out. All right, we got to write it as an interval. So interval's the green one that's up there. So I want just my x's. So I'm going to go to my furthest left dot, and I'm going to follow it to the x-axis. So -8, that is my smallest number. That's my smallest x that's being used by that line. And then because it's an open circle, it gets a parenthesis. And then I come down here to the right end. The right end stops at +8. And because it's a closed circle, it gets a bracket. And then from there, you should be able to fill in the other pieces. So as an inequality, remember when we have two numbers like this, the sign always goes this way. If it's a parenthesis, it doesn't get a line, x in the middle. If it has a bracket, it does get the line.
I'm so confused. What are you talking about, like half circle?
Oh, you can't, can you not see like on this end of the graph that it's an open circle?
Oh, yeah.
That's what I'm talking about. I'm going off of what that point looks like.
Oh.
That open circle tells me what parenthesis or bracket, and it tells me what kind of sign. Okay? If you ever get a page you can't see them, you can't tell, you ask me, you let me make sure you can see it. But that's what I'm looking at, are those dots on that graph. And then set builder again, all you do is you add an x with a vertical line and you write the inequality again. All right, range. So go to the x-axis for the domain. So where do you think we're going to go for the range? The y. So smallest. So I start bottom up. And I've seen teachers teach it like this, where you put a ruler at the bottom of the page and you push it up till you hit the first endpoint. Okay? But that's always the lowest dot, is always where you start for range. What's the y value there? So we know we're starting with 0. And then here's my highest point. So again, I'm going to draw a line and I'm going to follow it to the y-axis. And that value, that 4, is my other point. So here's what I'm looking at. So I'm going back to where this is 0. The dot that's at where y is 0 is solid. So that 0 gets a bracket. Going back to the 4 and back to the dot at 4. That one is an open circle at y is 4. So it gets a parenthesis. So they can, between domain and range, those parentheses and brackets can switch. That's completely possible. But you're always going to have the same amount. So if you've got 2 parentheses here, range is always going to be 2 parentheses, because that means both dots are open. So the dots being open or closed don't change between domain and range. They might just switch spots. All right, so we're starting at 0. And again, we can kind of fill in a template. We know we're always going to start with this. And then you can go back, and the 0 has a bracket, so that sign next to the 0 gets the line underneath it. And then set builder notation. Ooh, I messed up. That should be a Y. Be really careful with questions like that. I do that all the time. And test, do that all the time. First answer choice will be right. They'll just put an X there instead of a Y. So really watch. If it wants range, Y should be your letter. And so for set builder, Y and a vertical line, and then just write the inequality again. It's really easy to get twisted and turned around on range. So don't. If you got to use your notes for it, use those pages, you use them. Okay, from a table now. So this was a continuous function. Now let's write domain and range for a discrete function. So again, domain is the x's, range is the y. So for these discrete functions, if I want to write the domain, I'm going to use those curly Q brackets, and I'm just going to write the x values in numerical order. That's all I have to do. If a value repeats, I don't have to write it twice. Once I write it down, it's good. And then range, I'm going to do the same thing. So these are easy. When they give you these discrete functions, they're easy. You just write down all the x's. And then for range, I would just write down all the y's. And so for the mapping, we do the same way. So mappings, the left is always x, the right, the y, the direction the arrows are going. The right side is always y. These are a little bit tougher because we got to get them in order, and they're not always listed in order. So on these x's here, -4 is actually my smallest. It's best practice to write them in numerical order. And so range is y. This time my smallest is at the top. So I'm going to write them top down on this side. And that's all she wrote. So all I want you to do are those two discretes. That's all I want you to do on your own, are those two discrete tables, and you're done for the day with me. Okay?